At exactly 2:30 in the morning on February 1st, 2026, a silent alarm goes off in the digital world. A phantom simply slipped through the invisible digital net, but nothing appears to be stolen. The only thing missing from this immaculate house is the homeowner herself. The slightly open back door stands as a silent and mocking testament to the mystery. It is a deliberate signature left behind by someone who wanted the police to know they walked right in. The incident is no longer just a missing persons case. It is a masterclass in psychological manipulation and physical stealth. The scene poses an impossible question to the authorities. Who could convince a vulnerable woman to compromise her own safety without a single cry for help? The pristine walls of the house offer no answers. They only echo the terrifying truth that the threat did not need to break in. It simply waited for an invitation. An immaculate crime scene is the hallmark of a predator who is entirely in control. The devil does not always break down the door. They moved through the space like a phantom. The open back door is the only flaw in an otherwise perfect tableau. It is the singular thread that unravels the illusion of safety. The police carefully document the undisturbed living spaces, trying to reconcile the peaceful domestic setting with the horrifying reality of a violent abduction. The absence of Nancy is a heavy weight in the quiet rooms. The meticulously clean house is a crime scene that refuses to surrender its secrets easily. The detectives are left standing in a silent home trying to understand why a cautious grandmother would ever unlatch her own door in the dead of night. While the inside of the residence is perfectly undisturbed, the exterior tells a drastically different and horrifying story. Detectives thoroughly canvassing the perimeter make a chilling discovery on the front porch. There is blood. It is a stark, violent contrast to the immaculate interior of the home. Sometimes they just watch in silence from the vacant house next door. Subsequent forensic testing confirms the worst fears of the investigators and the family. The DNA extracted from the bloodstains perfectly matches Nancy Guthrie. The discovery of her blood just steps away from her front door shifts the entire narrative from a perplexing disappearance to a violent crime. The authorities begin to piece together the digital timeline of the night, attempting to synchronize the technological anomalies with the physical evidence on the porch. The sequence of events is a terrifying countdown. At 1:45 in the morning, the doorbell camera mysteriously loses its connection. It is effectively blinded, cutting off the visual perimeter of the home. 27 minutes later, at 2:12 in the morning, a motion detection software registers movement outside the house. However, because the homeowner lacked a premium subscription service, the camera fails to capture and store any video footage of the motion. It simply logs the disturbance and remains useless to the police. If you are haunted by the dark corners of criminal psychology and the forensic trails left by, then 18 minutes after the unrecorded motion at exactly 2:30 in the morning, the pacemaker application registers the sudden catastrophic disconnection, the digital flatline. This timeline reveals a slow, methodical, and terrifying progression. The house was clean. There was no struggle inside. Yet Nancy Guthrie bled on her own front porch at some point during this 45-minute window of darkness. How did a woman who was safely locked inside her immaculate house end up bleeding outside in the freezing night? The chronological data suggests she was not attacked in her bed. She was drawn out of her secure environment. The blinding of the camera at 1:45 was the first strategic move. The motion at 2:12 was likely the physical approach or the moment she stepped outside, and the final disconnection at 2:30 was the fatal conclusion. Modern predators, hit that subscribe button to uncover more dark files with Shadows with Liam. The contrast between the clean living room and the blood-stained porch is the most baffling contradiction of the entire case. It implies a scenario where the alleged attacker never needed to enter the home to commit the act. They managed to extract her from her fortress completely undisturbed. The blood is the only undeniable proof that violence occurred, but the pristine house mocks the investigators attempting to understand how. If you want to see how investigators decode crime scenes with zero signs of an interior struggle, make sure to subscribe to Shadows with Liam. We analyze the forensic contradictions that make cases like this so incredibly difficult to solve. The timeline is an unforgiving ledger of the incident. It tracks the exact moments the digital defenses fell, but it refuses to show the face of the architect behind the attack. The blood on the concrete is a silent witness to a violent extraction that leaves the authorities grappling with the terrifying reality of a perfectly executed ambush. The forensic teams meticulously swabbed the bloodstains on the porch. We are going to break down every single digital anomaly in this case. Investigators stare at the red markers, trying to reconstruct the physical choreography of the attack. Did she open the door to investigate a noise? The attacker operated in the dark spaces where the camera could not see, and the subscription service failed to record. No neighbors reported hearing screams. The violent act was committed with a terrifying quietness, leaving behind nothing but disconnected devices. The silence of the surrounding neighborhood during this brutal extraction is deeply unsettling. The perpetrator exploited the isolation of the late hour, moving with a calculated stealth that evaded all human detection. They bypassed the electronic safeguards and manipulated the environment to their absolute advantage. The porch became a silent battleground where a vulnerable woman met her terrifying fate. The lack of any audible disturbance suggests that the alleged attacker might have overwhelmed her, instantly preventing any chance for her to cry out for help. The meticulous execution of this plan demonstrates a level of sophistication that deeply alarms the federal authorities stepping in to take over the complex investigation. The terrifying truth is that we surround ourselves with technology, believing it will keep us safe from the monsters lurking in the dark. The investigation rapidly intensifies as federal agencies join the local police. The silence from the kidnappers is agonizing for the family. Savannah Guthrie, the prominent co-host of the Today Show on NBC, and the daughter of the victim, steps forward into the glaring media spotlight. She becomes the public face of the desperate search, directly addressing the nation and offering a massive $1 million reward for any information leading to her mother. Her emotional pleas, broadcasted to millions, underscore the severe gravity of the situation. The immense pressure to solve the case leads to a massive dragnet across Tucson. Investigators quickly lock onto their first major piece of physical evidence found away from the immediate crime scene. A pair of gloves is discovered discarded exactly 2 miles away from the Guthrie residence. For a brief moment, there is a surge of hope that the perpetrator made a careless mistake during their escape. But what happens when the monster understands your security system better than you do. The forensics team rushes the gloves to the laboratory for rapid DNA testing. However, the results deliver a crushing blow to the momentum of the investigation. The gloves belong to a local restaurant worker who simply dropped them while walking home. The individual is thoroughly vetted and completely unrelated to the crime. It is a frustrating false lead that drains valuable time and resources from the critical early hours of the search. Detectives are forced to pivot back to the house where the true answers remain stubbornly hidden. Deep inside the meticulously clean residence, forensic technicians utilizing advanced collection techniques make a breakthrough. They isolate a mixed DNA profile that does not belong to Nancy or her cleared family members. This microscopic trace of genetic material is the first tangible piece of the intruder left behind in the pristine environment. The authorities immediately run the profile through the National CODIS database, hoping for a quick match to a known offender. What happens when the cameras meant to protect you are blinded just moments before the predator strikes? The system churns through millions of records, but returns a devastating result. There is no match. The alleged attacker is a ghost in the system, with no prior felony convictions in the National Registry to betray their identity. The investigation hits a massive wall. They have the genetic blueprint of the suspect, but absolutely no name to attach to it. Days turn into weeks, and the trail threatens to go entirely cold. The detectives are drowning in data, but starving for a physical direction. The digital timeline is a dead end, and the physical evidence inside the house leads to an unknown phantom. The case appears to be entirely stalled. It is during this desperate phase that a former SWAT commander, reviewing the case files from an external perspective, notices a glaring environmental factor that everyone else has overlooked. The focus has been so intensely concentrated on the digital footprint and the microscopic DNA that they missed the massive structural advantage sitting right next door. The commander directs the attention of the task force to a specific piece of real estate. The data log flatline at 2:30 in the morning is not just a lost connection. There is a vacant house situated immediately to the west of the Guthrie property. It is an empty structure, completely devoid of residents and largely ignored by the surrounding community. Law enforcement descends upon the empty property. They execute a thorough search warrant, focusing heavily on the garage and the driveway area of the abandoned residence. The former tactical commander theorizes that this empty home was not just a coincidence of real estate, it was a highly strategic staging location. It provided the perfect hidden vantage point for a predator to sit in the darkness and meticulously observe the daily routines of the 84-year-old target next door. The vacant house offered complete concealment, allowing the alleged stalker to learn exactly when the garage door opened, when the lights went out, and precisely where the camera blind spots were located. The ghost did not just appear on the night of February 1st. They had been living in the shadows right next door, watching and waiting for the perfect moment to execute their flawless plan. A steady rhythm of a human heart monitored by a digital pacemaker application suddenly stops transmitting. It is the echo of a nightmare unfolding in real time. The implications of the vacant house are absolutely chilling. It shifts the entire psychological profile of the perpetrator from an opportunistic criminal to a highly organized and patient stalker. They did not simply wander into the Catalina foothills looking for a random target. They deliberately selected Nancy Guthrie and utilized the surrounding environment to build a comprehensive intelligence dossier on her life. The darkened windows of the abandoned garage served as an invisible sniper hide for a predator armed with binoculars and a notebook instead of a rifle. The discovery of this surveillance outpost completely changes the investigative strategy. The authorities realize they are hunting a sophisticated individual who understands urban camouflage. The vacant house is no longer just an empty building. It is the critical launching pad for a devastating crime that tore a family apart. The microscopic DNA and the empty house are now the central pillars of the hunt for a phantom. The digital silence screams louder than any physical evidence ever could. The exploration of the empty residence bordering the western edge of the victim's property reveals a chilling new dimension to the investigation. Detectives step into the dusty, suffocating air of the abandoned structure and immediately sense that this was not merely an unused building, it was a tactical theater. The layout of the empty home provides a direct, unobstructed line of sight into the private spaces of the neighboring lot. From the darkened windows of the adjacent garage, a person could monitor every arrival and departure without ever stepping into the daylight. The concept of a staging location transforms the narrative of the crime from a sudden violent act into a prolonged psychological horror. A staging ground requires time, patience, and a terrifying level of dedication to the hunt. The authorities carefully sift through the accumulated dust and debris, looking for any physical remnants left behind by the occupant. Every discarded item or disturbed patch of dirt could potentially identify the phantom who utilized this space. The psychological weight of this discovery is immense. The realization that a predator was actively living in the shadows just yards away from the intended target sends shockwaves through the community. It tells a story of a calculated and chillingly precise operation. The residents of the affluent neighborhood suddenly view every unoccupied property with deep suspicion. The vacant house served as a perfect urban camouflage, allowing the alleged stalker to blend seamlessly into the quiet environment. They did not need to hide in the bushes or wait in a parked car on the street. They possessed a permanent, invisible outpost. This level of premeditation suggests a highly organized offender who meticulously planned every phase of the abduction. They studied the lighting, the schedules, and the security perimeter. The terrifying reality is that the victim was likely observed for days or even weeks before the night of the attack. Every time she stepped out to retrieve the mail or water the plants, invisible eyes were tracking her movements. The empty structure provided the ultimate sanctuary for the watcher. The investigators document the angles of observation, realizing that the perpetrator had a perfect vantage point to identify the blind spots of the digital defenses next door. They knew exactly where the camera fields of view ended and where the shadows began. An 84-year-old woman is gone. Her digital heartbeat is severed. This knowledge was weaponized to execute the flawless extraction. The police recognize that finding this staging area is a critical breakthrough, but it also deepens the mystery. Who possesses the tactical discipline to maintain absolute silence and invisibility in a suburban environment for an extended period? The search of the property yields microscopic trace evidence, but the true value of the house lies in what it reveals about the mind of the attacker. It exposes a cold, calculating intellect that views human life as a target to be studied and systematically dismantled. The vacant home is a monument to the stalker's patience. The local police force works tirelessly to determine the ownership history of the empty real estate, hoping to find a connection to the suspect. The frustration mounts as the physical space offers profound insight into the method but yields frustratingly little about the identity. The community remains paralyzed by the thought that the predator was hiding in plain sight, utilizing the very fabric of their neighborhood against them. The concept of safety is irrevocably shattered. A locked door offers no comfort when the threat has already spent weeks mapping the interior from a distance. The void she leaves behind raises questions that authorities are still desperately trying to answer. The investigative team stands inside the dusty garage, looking out through the smudged glass at the pristine home next door. They can almost feel the presence of the watcher. The meticulous nature of the stakeout indicates that the alleged kidnapper was deeply committed to this specific target. This was a targeted operation executed with military precision. The authorities must now deconstruct the stalker's timeline. They need to know exactly when the phantom arrived and how long they occupied the hidden sanctuary. The empty house stands as a silent witness to the chilling prelude of the crime. The space itself is entirely unremarkable, but the malicious intent it housed makes it the most terrifying piece of evidence in the entire investigation. The focus must now shift to uncovering the historical footprint of the stalker. If the watcher spent time in the area, they must have left some trace on the surrounding surveillance network. The digital breadcrumbs are the only witnesses to a crime that has baffled investigators and paralyzed a family. Every camera within a 2-mile radius becomes a vital piece of the puzzle. The detectives begin the exhaustive process of pulling weeks of recorded data from surrounding properties, hoping to catch a glimpse of a shadow moving toward the staging location. The vacant house is the anchor point, and the investigators must cast a massive net to reel in the invisible entity that called it home. The tension builds as they realize the predator might have been captured on film long before the fatal night. The exhaustive review of historical digital data yields the most horrifying breakthrough of the entire investigation. The authorities decide to look backward, analyzing the archive footage from the security systems in the days leading up to the disappearance. They are searching for the ghost who lived in the abandoned house, and they finally find him. The pristine digital record reveals a terrifying secret that the homeowner never knew. Days before the violent extraction, a solitary figure walked right up to the front porch. Are we ever truly secure in our own homes? Or are we simply providing the footage is crystal clear and absolutely chilling? The suspect is a male standing approximately 5'9" to 5'10" tall with an average physical build. But it is his deliberate attire that signifies pure malicious intent. He is wearing a full face mask, completely obscuring his features from the high-definition lens. His hands are covered by thick gloves, ensuring no physical prints are left on the property. Most distinctly, he is carrying a very specific piece of equipment strapped to his back. Federal agents immediately identify the bag as an Ozark Trail hiker pack, a highly common brand sold at Walmart stores nationwide. This specific detail, the backpack, becomes the defining image of the manhunt. The appearance of this masked man in the days prior completely shatters the timeline. He did not simply arrive on the night of the crime. He was conducting a dry run. Watchers with a false sense of security while they planned their perfect approach. He stood on the porch, staring directly into the lens of the security apparatus. He was testing the system. This single piece of footage provides the horrifying answer to the most baffling question of the case. It perfectly explains how the alleged attacker knew exactly when and how to disable the wireless connection on the night of the abduction. He had already scouted the network. He knew the precise physical boundaries of the motion sensors. By walking up to the door on a previous day, he was mapping the perimeter and identifying the exact blind spots where the technology failed to reach. He was conducting reconnaissance from the empty staging ground next door and then physically verifying his theories on the porch itself. The sheer audacity of the act is paralyzing. He stood in the open, fully disguised, and dared the system to catch him. When no alarm sounded and no police arrived, he knew his plan was flawless. The revelation of this preliminary visit recontextualizes the entire nature of the threat. The answer lies somewhere in the missing minutes. The victim was living in a state of absolute peril for days, completely unaware that a masked predator had already stood at her threshold. The chilling realization is that the technology did exactly what it was designed to do. It recorded the threat, but because the homeowner was not actively watching the live feed at that exact moment, the warning went entirely unnoticed. The digital watchdog silently documented the approach of the wolf, but could not sound the alarm. The footage of the man with the Ozark Trail Pack is the absolute peak of the terror in this narrative. It proves that the violent act was the culmination of a meticulously researched and rehearsed operation. The alleged kidnapper possessed a terrifying level of patience and technical understanding. He did not just bypass the security, he exploited its limitations. The authorities now have a physical description, a specific brand of backpack, and a clear understanding of the suspect's methodical nature. They are hunting a predator who treats abduction as a logistical puzzle to be solved. The illusion of safety is a powerful comfort. The image of the masked figure standing silently on the porch is burned into the minds of the investigators. It is a haunting portrait of modern stalking, where the attacker uses your own defenses to plan your demise. The presence of the backpack suggests he was carrying tools, possibly the very instruments used to sever the digital connections or extract the victim. The mystery of the immaculate living room and the severed medical data is finally unraveled. The intruder never needed to break in because he had already solved the maze from the outside. He manipulated the environment from the empty property and tested the boundaries in plain sight. If you are fascinated by the chilling reality of premeditated crimes and the forensic breakthroughs that expose them, make sure to subscribe to Shadows with Liam for more deep dives into the dark side of human behavior. The investigators have the image, but the mask hides the identity. The hunt escalates into a desperate race to match the physical profile with the genetic material left behind. Just 45 minutes prior, at 1:45 in the morning, a front porch doorbell camera mysteriously loses its wireless connection and goes completely dark. Nancy Guthrie, an 84-year-old woman, lives alone in the quiet and affluent neighborhood of the Catalina foothills in Tucson, Arizona. The investigation now operates on two parallel and highly urgent tracks. On one side, law enforcement agencies launch a massive public manhunt based on the chilling security footage. The image of the masked suspect carrying the Ozark Trail hiker pack is distributed across national media networks. The authorities hope that someone somewhere will recognize the specific posture, the build, or the distinctive combination of clothing and equipment. The ubiquitous nature of the backpack, sold in thousands of retail locations, makes tracking a direct purchase nearly impossible, but it provides a critical visual anchor for the public. The focus is to identify any individual matching that exact description who may have been seen loitering near the empty neighborhood lot in the weeks prior. Simultaneously, the scientific division of the Federal Bureau of Investigation initiates the most advanced forensic technique available to modern law enforcement. The microscopic trace of mixed genetic material recovered from the scene is the key to unlocking the identity of the phantom. Traditional databases failed to provide a match indicating the suspect has no prior felony record. She is surrounded by the invisible armor of modern convenience. To circumvent this dead end, the authorities turn to investigative genetic genealogy. This groundbreaking process bypasses standard criminal databases and instead utilizes commercial DNA platforms to build a comprehensive family tree. By identifying distant relatives who share overlapping genetic markers, scientists can slowly construct a biological map leading directly to the suspect. It is a meticulous and time-consuming process that requires tracing lineage through decades of public records, birth certificates, and census data. The genetic genealogists work backward from distant cousins, narrowing the branches of the family tree until they isolate a specific individual who fits the geographic and physical profile of the masked man. This technique has revolutionized cold case investigations and is now being deployed in real time to hunt down an active predator. The combination of the physical footage and the biological blueprint represents a formidable arsenal against the alleged attacker. The authorities possess his genetic code and his operational methodology. However, the grueling reality of genealogy is that it takes time. Her home is outfitted with a smart doorbell camera. Time is the one resource the investigators simply do not have. Every passing hour diminishes the hope of a safe recovery. The tension remains incredibly high as the scientific process slowly grinds forward. The detectives are caught in a torturous waiting game, praying the genetic mapping is completed before the trail goes completely cold. The deployment of this advanced science offers a beacon of hope, but it cannot immediately erase the haunting reality of the crime. The suspect proved his intelligence by evading the digital traps and utilizing the abandoned environment to his advantage. Now he must evade the inescapable reach of his own biological code. The manhunt represents a clash between the dark cunning of a calculated stalker and the illuminating power of modern forensic science. The authorities are closing the net, utilizing both public vigilance and microscopic data to corner the predator. The empty house has been thoroughly processed. The digital timeline is fully understood, and the genetic sequence is currently unraveling. Her medical well-being is constantly monitored by an application synced directly to her pacemaker. Yet the ultimate question remains unanswered. The authorities know how he did it, and they are painstakingly discovering who he is. But the whereabouts of the 84-year-old victim and the true motive behind such a terrifyingly complex operation continue to elude the desperate investigators. The pressure on the forensic teams is unimaginable as they sift through hundreds of family connections. They isolate the intersection of geography and opportunity, pointing to the man with the backpack. The public waits for a breakthrough. The shadow that slipped out of the vacant house is still out there somewhere, aware that the authorities hold his genetic signature. The relentless pursuit continues, driven by the silent alarm that started this nightmare. What this case teaches us about modern stalking is that technological reliance often creates a fatal illusion of invulnerability. The disappearance of Nancy Guthrie stands as a terrifying case study in how 21st century predators exploit the exact systems designed to deter them. We view cameras and digital monitors as physical shields, but they are strictly reactive tools. They merely document a timeline of tragedy, if not actively monitored. From the outside looking in, her life is a fortress of digital safety nets designed to alert the outside world the moment anything goes wrong. This profound investigation highlights the critical vulnerability of the smart home architecture. When an attacker rehearses their approach and memorizes the blind spots, the technology is effortlessly neutralized. Furthermore, the utilization of the abandoned property exposes a chilling psychological insight into criminal behavior known as urban camouflage. The predator did not lurk in a dark alley. They embedded themselves in the mundane fabric of an affluent neighborhood, using the quiet facade of an empty residence as a tactical staging ground. This teaches a highly vital lesson in community safety. A vacant house is not simply an eyesore. It is a profound security vulnerability. It provides the perfect concealed environment for an offender to establish a sustained surveillance operation without triggering any suspicion. The true danger lies not in the unknown stranger passing through town, but in the patient watcher who integrates themselves into the local environment. This complex case demands a complete reevaluation of how we assess threat levels in suburban spaces. It is a system built on trust in technology. Law enforcement and citizens alike must recognize that true security requires proactive human vigilance. We must acknowledge the physical environment surrounding our digital fortresses. The unmonitored empty spaces adjacent to our homes are the true blind spots where calculated predators patiently prepare their perfect approach under the guise of absolute normalcy. The digital silence of a disconnected medical device was the only warning of a meticulously planned abduction. The authorities are now armed with the genetic code of a phantom and the chilling footage of a man in a mask carrying a hiker pack. The sophisticated forensic science is slowly closing in on the identity of the stalker who manipulated the digital boundaries of a secure home. Yet the haunting reality remains that this predator orchestrated a flawless extraction by simply watching from the shadows next door. The investigation continues to push forward, relentlessly seeking justice and answers for a devastated family. But as the science works to unmask the attacker, one terrifying question lingers long after the screens go dark. How long was the man with the backpack hiding in that empty house before he finally stepped onto the porch? On the evening of January 31st, 2026, that trust seems entirely justified. And more importantly, as you sit safely behind your locked doors tonight, is there a vacant property sitting silently at the edge of your own neighborhood? Leave your theories in the comments below and click the video on your screen right now to uncover another terrifying true crime file on Shadows with Liam. At 9:48 in the evening, Nancy returns home after enjoying a quiet dinner with her family. Her son-in-law drives her up to the house. He watches as she goes inside and the heavy garage door rolls down, securing the perimeter. The sudden loss of digital footprints is not a technical glitch. Police and federal investigators have thoroughly examined this timeline and officially cleared the son-in-law and her daughter of any involvement. They are the last known people to see her alive and well. After the garage door closes, Nancy is sealed inside her fortress. The doors lock. The security systems are armed. The digital watchers stand guard over the quiet property. The night settles over the Catalina foothills with absolute stillness. There is no reason to suspect that anything is out of the ordinary. A grandmother is resting safely in her bed, monitored by state-of-the-art medical technology and protected by external cameras. But this is the fatal flaw of the modern smart home. Surveillance systems are purely reactive. They are designed to document an intrusion after it has already begun. It is the exact moment a human being is erased from the physical world. They record the presence of a threat, but they do not possess the physical ability to stop a hand from turning a doorknob or a figure from crossing a threshold. Technology can only bear witness to a tragedy. It cannot intervene. As the clock ticks past midnight, the invisible shield surrounding Nancy Guthrie remains completely undisturbed. The motion sensors are quiet. The doorbell camera displays a static view of the empty porch. The pacemaker sends its steady and reassuring signals to the cloud. Everything appears to be in perfect working order. Yet this profound silence is not the sound of safety. It is the sound of a predator patiently waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The tension lies in the unseen. Someone is aware of these systems. How does an 84-year-old woman simply vanish from a perfectly secured home? Someone knows exactly how they function and, more importantly, how to bypass them. The family sleeps soundly miles away, entirely confident in the impenetrable nature of the Catalina Foothills home. They have no idea that the digital walls protecting their beloved mother are about to be dismantled piece by piece. The security system is armed, but it is completely blind to the threat already maneuvering into position. The cameras will not stop the tragedy. They will only document the terrifying prelude to a nightmare. The tragedy of the smart home is its inherent passivity. It provides a false sense of absolute invulnerability to the people living inside it. Nancy Guthrie trusts her locked doors and her electronic monitors. She trusts that the quiet neighborhood will remain quiet. But true danger does not announce itself with a blaring siren. It creeps in through the blind spots. In the middle of the night, leaving behind nothing but a flat line on a data log. The systems are functioning perfectly, but they are about to be outsmarted by a mind far more cunning than a simple motion detector. The digital fortress is about to fall. The morning of February 1st begins with an eerie calm that quickly shatters into sheer panic. It is a Sunday. Nancy Guthrie is a woman of strict routines and deep faith. She never misses her scheduled events. When she fails to log on and attend her regular online church service, her family immediately senses that something is terribly wrong. They try to contact her, but there is no response. The silence is deafening. At exactly 11:56 in the morning, the mounting dread culminates in a desperate call to 911. The family reports her missing, initiating a massive response from local law enforcement. Officers arrive at the Catalina Foothills residence expecting the worst. They approach the property with extreme caution, anticipating signs of a violent home invasion. But when they step inside, they are met with a scene that defies all logic. This is the terrifying reality of the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie. The interior of the house is immaculate. Every piece of furniture is in its proper place. There are no shattered lamps and no overturned chairs. There is absolutely no physical evidence of a struggle or a violent confrontation inside the living room, the kitchen, or the bedroom. The pristine condition of the home is more unsettling than a chaotic crime scene would be. It suggests a chilling level of control. However, investigators discover one deeply disturbing anomaly. According to reports from News Nation, the back door of the residence is found left slightly ajar. It is not kicked in. The lock is not picked or broken. It is simply pushed open just enough to let the cold reality of the situation seep into the meticulously kept house. This detail changes the entire trajectory of the investigation. If the door was not breached by force, then the intruder did not smash their way into the home. The home is completely intact. There are no shattered windows and no splintered door frames. There was no sudden, violent ambush that would have left the house in disarray. The terrifying implication begins to dawn on the detectives standing in the pristine hallway. The alleged kidnapper did not have to break down the heavy doors to get inside. Nancy Guthrie, a cautious 84-year-old woman living alone, somehow opened the door for them. Or she was lured outside without the opportunity to secure the house behind her. Why would she do that in the middle of the night? What could possibly compel her to bypass her own security measures and open her home to the darkness? The lack of interior damage points to a highly specific and targeted operation. This is not a random burglary gone wrong. A random thief would toss the house looking for valuables, leaving a trail of destruction.